Okay, awesome. We are live and recording. Marco, welcome to the SpeakEasy podcast, where we
Yep,
talk
thank you.
about
Thanks for
the
having me.
frontier of tech and the builders who are building it. Marco is a 21-year-old founder from NYC. He's building Claritech, a Telegram trading terminal that is now branching into InfoFi as well. So, thank you,
Correct.
Marco.
Of
Um,
course.
Before we started recording, we were chatting a bit about young founders and using AI to build
Yeah,
stuff. And you
right.
mentioned some of your friends had ideas, but they're like, I can't build it because I don't have a dev. And
Yeah,
I find that super interesting because you're like right at that age where people are growing up with this stuff.
right.
It's like
Right.
having the internet, if you're like 18 and the internet just got released or
Right.
JavaScript just got released.
Right.
Uh, so what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you tell them?
Well, I think that for some people, like especially using AI for school and that kind of thing, we kind of get used to using AI out of necessity. So, like myself, oftentimes, a lot of, in many situations, having multiple projects going on at once, like just for efficiency, I kind of need to use, I'm forced to use AI to the best of my abilities just to get things done. But in a sense as well, like I can see where a lot of like my classmates and so on are coming from because we kind of get in, academia is a little bit of a field that has a lot of like inertia, so they kind of struggle with like adapting to new things, especially, like a lot of these people are, we're kind of indoctrinated into not using AI, not using like the newest tools that could help us with efficiency, that kind of thing,
It's
because
crazy.
we're meant to,
Yeah.
yeah, we're meant to do things the old school way, whatever, do it the same
Yeah.
way professors did it, and so on and so forth. But I think there's gonna come a point where it's like it's kind of too big to deny. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I
Mhm.
mean, I guess we're already kind of there, but yeah, I mean, I think plenty of people just don't really necessarily trust AI in that way, especially people of my age. I figure the next generation, maybe people 10 years younger, right, who are 10, 11, 12, who are kind of growing up with it in the palm of their hands, will become a lot more like the native users, you know what I mean? Whereas we'll be kind of the people who were using MySpace, but we can't transition to Instagram or that kind of thing, you know what I mean? Um,
Right. So
so
that's
yeah,
that's crazy because like when you look at industry like Shopify and other companies, they are full speed ahead, like putting out public memos. We are AI first. We use AI. Like if you want to survive here,
yeah,
you will use AI as much as possible. But then in
100%.
school, there is like I'm like I have large opinions about academia personally. I
Right.
have a huge chip on my shoulder about it. I don't think they do a good job at all. I'll just come out and say that. That's my
Why is that?
position on it.
Where are you coming from with that?
So I just feel like there is, like you said, there's like a ton of inertia.
Right.
The methodology for teaching just like doesn't really make sense. It made sense like maybe 30 or 40 years ago, but
Yep.
when everyone got a smartphone, it's like, okay, now you have all this information and like what is the point of all of us sitting in a classroom listening to this one person talk about something? There's like a place for that for sure, but it's not like that's not like the main methodology. And then
Right.
I think there's a lot of like rote instruction where it's like memorize all this stuff, but there's very little teaching for agency
Yeah.
and being productive. And I think that is like you're almost being taught to scroll. You're being taught to be a consumer, where it's like,
Right.
okay, here's. So I went to school for genetics and biochemistry, and it's
Okay.
just like scroll and memorize, but very
Yes.
little like, okay, how do we like build the next thing so that we can
Yeah.
understand like what is the frontier? So
Correct.
that's my take. I can spiel
Yeah.
about that for hours.
I think that it's also like uh, pretty subject um, based. I guess like a lot of these pre-medical studies subjects, oftentimes it is a lot of memorization, that kind of thing, and there's not really much incentive for innovation in those kinds of spaces. Whereas like when you're studying, let's say computer science, mathematics, I think the people are naturally those types of innovative kind of people. And then, you know, I guess you're incentivized to work together in a sense. But yeah, I definitely think that there could be a lot more stress put on, like, you know, hey, like, why don't we do something cool? Because oftentimes it's like you're at this age, you want to do something that is either valuable, you know, realistically can make you money, or helps people, right?
And you're like naive, right? Because
Right,
you haven't really had that experience in the real world. So it's like,
right.
I can build XYZ. You
Exactly.
have
And
the
that
energy. Yeah.
delusional kind of self-belief is huge. You know what I mean? You give
Yeah,
people
it's
that
super
kind of
important.
belief and they can, you know, go and do anything, you know? And that's the thing is that, yeah, a lot of academia kind of kills that belief. You're kind of just taught to not explore that at all. And I do get that, okay, you can kind of go down the wrong path with that, but at the same time, you should be taught to kind of express yourself in however you kind of want to,
Hmm.
you know, in a way that is obviously productive for society, right? But,
Yeah. And so it's so weird that like AI is not like really at the forefront. I feel like there's a bit of gatekeeping and like protectionism around it. Like they're in denial about,
right.
you know, their role and like the instructor's role. And like usually your instructor is like this 60, maybe 70-year-old
Hmm.
dude who like has tenure, has a huge chip on his shoulder, and
Right.
maybe that like kind of filters down to the people, but I think it's
For sure.
doing like students a massive disservice. So
Correct.
you use a ton of AI with
Yeah.
what you're building and what you're learning. So how does that work for you? And like, how did you start with this idea? And I guess where are you now?
So I guess I started using AI as obviously like a tool for just efficiency in school and that kind of thing. And then obviously like I've been in crypto for a few years now, so I've been you know actively sort of quote unquote trading or doing that kind of thing since late 2022. Um, Over time, you know, I had been learning, you know, I had been studying probability and that kind of thing. And once I saw a little bit of success, I was like, okay, why don't I build, you know, like a model to help me, you know, with my sizing, with, you know, kind of specifics of trading and that kind of thing. You know, I was like, you know, why don't I go down a little bit more of a quantitative path here? To help me do that, I used AI heavily to kind of give me a set of rules. Eventually, I sort of started. I moved into like the Solana space where people were just kind of buying these like culture tokens, right? Which you know, whatever we could call is like the meme coin frenzy of like 2024. I noticed that a lot of these like cultural narratives were coming from social media, so I used AI to help me build a scraper. It scraped TikTok, it scraped Instagram for thousands and thousands of posts daily, and I used that scraper to then grab data, and obviously I would use large language models to help me parse that data, and then based on that data, then I would make informed decisions about my trading and that sort of thing, and that worked pretty well for me for a little while until people kind of became a little bit faster. You know, essentially I realized people were doing the same thing but faster. You know,
Right, the
because
flash
there was
bots like
right, yeah,
paradox is like
there
always a
was
race.
yeah, there was just money in there was money in it, right? And then people obviously see that, and the market gets more efficient to the point where then I had kind of lost my hunger for it after a little while, and I lost my edge. But over time, I'm still very active in the crypto space, so I'm looking at all the new products that are available and that kind of thing. And obviously, Polymarket kind of was blowing up with the election last year. Prediction markets were getting huge. They all hit all-time highs in volume by the magnitude of 3-4x their previous volume all-time highs and that kind of thing. So that kept it on my radar. All throughout this year, I'm watching Polymarket just to make kind of informed decisions about like what's going to happen, Fed rate cuts, that kind of thing. I see it all over Twitter, and eventually, I kind of was like, okay, like I want to do something with myself. I'm sitting here, market's too choppy. I'm not really doing too much, so I'm like, hey, let me think about something that I can do within this space that might be able to help people. And obviously, everybody wants to do something where they can profit themselves. So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I look into Polymarket, I'm reading the docs, I see that, they have a completely free API, meaning you can grab all their data for free. And I was like, this is enormous. In the past, when I've tried to build things when I was a little bit younger, I would try to build tools and stuff using, OpenAI API, Twitter API, et cetera. A lot of these things become expensive when you get users, and they're not necessarily sustainable unless you have a for-profit model from the very, very start. And in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of other young founders who are successful, you can't really be aiming for a for-profit model from the very start. You want to cater to users, you want to get users, you want to get feedback, and you want to build a good product. So I noticed that, this was going to be completely free. I was like, hey, I need to think of something that I can do with this data. And so honestly, I would say that's kind of still even where I'm at right now. I thought, okay, we have these prediction markets. They're going to get faster. They're hitting all-time highs in volume. In fact, they hit all-time high in volume last October. So just a few weeks ago, it was another all-time high in volume above that one from the election last month. I think it was something like $3.4 billion of volume for Polymarket, which is insane. So I thought to myself, hey, like this market needs to be serviced. This volume needs to go somewhere. And I looked into the space of trading bots because I use trading bots all the time to trade previously. So I was like, okay, let me build something. Let me build a trading bot on Telegram because I know traders on Telegram and they want to trade on Telegram. So I was like, okay, let's build something for Telegram because there was nothing available, really. Nothing of value. There's a couple of competitors, but these kind of didn't seem like long-term projects that they were building. They had tokens, they had all this kind of stuff, and the quality wasn't really there. So I was like, all right, let me make something of quality. So in the past 2 weeks, I built out the trading bot. Clara is kind of the overarching project where we use the data to build products. And Cheetah Bot is the bot that is now the fastest bot on the market to buy Polymarket, markets, and you just paste in a URL, boom, within 3-4 seconds, you can send in a market buy, limit order, however you want. And yeah, that's our main prop. Zero fees, nothing, no cost to the user, and all is vetted by Polymarket's builder codes, builder program that we applied for, and we have the APIs for. So yeah.
That's pretty sick. And so you've had like this long journey in markets. You've been in markets and trading and trading bots for a while, and you just saw that there is this like big open space in InfoFi and Polymarket, and
Totally.
it's kind of shocking because like there was the election and that made sense. It's a very big, like everyone wants to know that outcome. Very like mimetic graph to see that every day.
Sure.
And then it kind of died out for a bit, and it just like, because I
Yeah.
was looking at Polymarket at the beginning of this year and I'm like, should I get into this? And I was like, well, it's like you can't really you can't like make like large leverage trades on it. You can't like,
Hmm.
the volume's very low, like it's
For
mostly
sure.
sports and there's like not too many things that are interesting that are happening. And so I didn't, and now it's blown up and I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck. Could have been building
Yeah.
Polymarket bots all year. So it's blown up, and then it didn't just blow up, it became very like almost astroturfed into like a foundational new paradigm where like A16Z was talking about it and like South Park made an episode about it,
Right.
and out of nowhere everyone's like, we are now a prediction market society.
Right.
So
I mean,
what are your yeah, go
I
ahead.
think I think that the thing is that forecasting and that kind of industry has been around for a long time. So there's always been professional forecasters. There's always been other sites that are there for people who can essentially put in their opinions on what's going to happen. Professional forecasters all coming together to kind of pull together an opinion market of what might happen with the Ukraine-NATO war, with the Ukraine-Russia war, with Fed rate cuts, et cetera. Political markets have always been a thing. And over time, people kind of realized, and in the literature it says this. I read a great book last year that kind of put me on this path, which was called Super Forecasters by a professor at UPenn just down the road, and And in that book, they do claim at the end that, a market of ideas is kind of where you're going to get the most accurate judgment of forecasting. And the more liquidity is in the market, the more accurate it's going to be. And that's kind of the idea that Shane Copeland built on to build Polymarket. And that's kind of been true. That people have realized that that's true. Polymarket has, outdone any polling, any forecasting for the last year, and that's why it's gained so much popularity. And I think that people really want to see that kind of thing when it comes to politics, because politics, people feel like they're getting fed the wrong information, especially from the news sources, media outlets, et cetera. It always feels like something is biased. But then once you put money on the line, you put liquidity on the line, that's when you see that, we're getting the best judgment here. And so that's where Polymarket kind of has taken off, because you could see that, user base grew tenfold from the election last year. And then this year, it was sort of the reason that it took off so much was because of the New York mayoral election, which was kind of contentious in the news. Polls had it quite close. Zoran Mamdani, he's a
And
a
like
polarizing
insane
figure.
liquidity, right? Like 400
Exactly.
million or something
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
there was about 400 million of open interest, and they had it. Polymarket had it at like a vastly different numbers than polling. Polling had it at something like 52-47. Polymarket had it at like 95% Zoran since June. Something like that. And then they called it 40 minutes earlier before any news outlet. They resolved the market. So that kind of thing is not, that's not that's not something to just to scoff at. That's huge. That's huge for the future of information. And so yeah, I mean, and then naturally, Polymarket wants to build their ecosystem, and they kind of incentivize devs to use their free data to build all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Is I'm talking with a number of people who are interested in doing something with that and building maybe a new media primitive or that kind of thing based on this kind of information. So yeah. And then obviously you have to service traders so that there's liquidity in the market and we get to know more things about more things, right? But yeah.
Yeah. No, it's such a cool space. Like I have a ton of stuff like we can talk about here with this. So, um, I mean, like to what you said at the end there of like new media and this
Mhm.
idea that you can look at the news by just looking at Polymarket and just
Right.
looking at these charts and you
Right.
can see like the shape of narratives. You can see narratives collapse,
Yeah.
and you are seeing the closest thing to the truth. And it's kind of weird that that's how it worked out, where like the closest thing to the truth is this graph of trades and bets. It makes sense if you like have a background
Right.
in, finance and markets, and
Hmm.
but to other people, I feel like normies per se are slowly coming
Right.
online to this fact that the market doesn't lie, and
Yeah.
where people are putting their money, especially large amounts of money, like that's information. And
Hmm.
something that Polymarket did really well is just being able to like show that information in a way that anyone can understand. And I mean, I've seen like Polymarket graphs like printed in like print newspaper,
100%. No, I mean,
and
you
it
see
looks
it everywhere
ridiculous,
now.
but it's
You know,
like cool.
I mean, you should see all over New York
Yeah,
City, Times Square, et cetera, Polymarket everywhere. Polymarket called it, et cetera.
yeah,
Polymarket is becoming a household name, and it completely is going to be. And so honestly, and now you see like Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, everybody, all these mainstream people are using it as like what's the Polymarket? What's the Polymarket on this?
hmm,
And it's a catchy name as well, But there's multiple competitors in that space. I guess I chose to build on Polymarket because it's crypto native, because they have that free API,
yeah. I don't
that
even
kind of
think
thing.
they're real competitors, to be honest. I don't think Kalshi. Something about Kalshi doesn't really
It doesn't.
jive with me.
It's yes, something doesn't drive, and you can honestly, you could see it right off the bat. Like, what's
Yeah,
the poly market or what's the call sheet? And it doesn't work. You know what I mean?
it doesn't work.
Now,
Yeah.
call sheet is more regulatory friendly, and so they actually have market makers, right?
Hmm.
Polymarket doesn't have market makers yet. So Kalshi has market makers, and they have a lot of liquidity in majority of their markets, whereas Polymarket has a very top-heavy liquidity distribution. And so because of that, you can kind of, if you're a trader, you can sort of make more money on more markets in call sheet than you can on Polymarket. But Polymarket does have a very, very dedicated community, more so than call sheet, just because it is kind of a crypto community, and there is going to be an airdrop and so on and so forth. And so you get this kind of diehard community around it, and I think that eventually you're gonna incentivize long-term builders. So far, why I realized it's an important place to build is because right now you have a lot of tools, but crypto is kind of a mercenary industry, and you do see that like a lot of the builders are kind of using the hype, the narrative to spin up and make a quick buck. They'll build a quick tool, so that's something like mine, launch a token on Solana for it, stir up a little bit of hype, pull out, make high 5 to low 6 figures on, a token rug essentially,
Same
with,
as it ever was.
yeah, with little to no risk, right? And the thing with that is that honestly made me more bullish on becoming a builder, because I was like, hey, look, like you have all these people, even some of the biggest tools in Polymarket are essentially what you could, I don't want to throw shade at anybody, but essentially what you could call scams, right?
100%.
But Polymarket has millions and millions of dollars that they want to throw at real builders, at long-term builders, and that's why, I felt like this is a no-brainer. If you're an intelligent young person, you want to go do something on Polymarket, because they're going to support you. And the competition are these people who are essentially scamming others, So yeah, I thought, this is somewhere to build long-term, because this is only going to grow. This is an ecosystem that's only going to grow. And yeah, that's...
Yeah, and like to even go a step further with it and kind of get a little more futuristic and sci-fi here.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the term feudarchy, Robin Hanson?
Yeah.
So yeah, I read that a few months ago, and I was like, damn, this is like, and I mean that was written in like the late 90s, or I think early 90s actually. And at the time when I was reading it, I was like I was like a lot more bearish on prediction markets kind of breaking out.
Okay.
But the idea was very interesting, because having markets, and so feudarchy, I'll just kind of
lay it out, because I have heard the term. I've heard the term a
Yeah.
bunch, because what's his name? Tully from Solana. He's always talking about feudarchy, and a lot of people are talking about feudarchy, but I never actually went into it and got like a formal definition or informal definition. So let's.
Yeah. It's like very becoming in vogue again. But so feudarchy is basically you vote on your values, but you bet your beliefs, and it's the idea of markets as a way of government. So instead of like democracy or autocracy, you have feudarchy, and basically the market decides what we should do as a society or as a culture. And an example of that is like the election with Mamdani is a great example. So the thing that the paper sets out that hasn't happened yet, but it would be really interesting to see if this can happen, is it's always kind of like a two-layer market. So there's the first market, which is like, will he win or won't he win? And then for each of those outcomes, there's two more outcomes. Will New York's GDP go up, or will net inflow of new people like moving into New York go up? Some sort of objective measure of success for him. So you're betting yes or no he's going to win, and then you're betting for each of those outcomes, yes or no that New York is going to be more successful. And by doing that and kind of focusing your bets and like looking at the poly market for layer 2, you can see what the market and what kind of like the consensus is of whether that will actually be a good idea. So it's going a step further than like, will he win or won't he win? It's is that a good idea? Is him winning good for New York or bad for New York?
Yeah.
And then kind of letting that guide the decision. So if everyone's looking at that and saying, oh, like he's going to win, but that's bad, it helps push the narrative that he shouldn't win, or that like it kind of makes it clear to everyone that a bad thing is about to happen in a very like, public and transparent way.
Yeah, and then it can change the outcome of will he win or won't he win, right? So I see what you mean. Interesting. Yeah, I think that, we're kind of moving towards this like sort of hyper marketized
The
world.
tokenization of everything.
Right, the tokenization of everything, right? And
Yeah.
um, I do truly believe in that kind of becoming a norm in the next decade or so, maybe more, maybe less. However, I do kind of worry for the sustainability of that, because one thing for me is that, um, you know, I've always kind of when I started crypto, right, like a number of years ago, I've always been one of these younger guys who always wanted money. I always wanted to make money. That was kind of that was the underlying incentive, especially when I was much younger and like I didn't really have any when I was like 17, 18 before I ever really worked. And over time, you kind of realize, the markets kind of humble you. You
Yeah.
realize, like you don't really know what you're doing. You're kind of sort of gambling in many ways, and sometimes they bless you, sometimes they don't. And over time, I kind of became, although I wanted to make money, that the reality of that sort of went down, and my intellectual curiosity towards markets went up. And so I kind of became someone who's a more sophisticated participant in the way that I treat markets, as like a source of truth and that kind of thing. But I realized that, gambling my money on it was maybe not the best idea. And the problem that I see is that a lot of people they struggle to get out of that mindset of like
Mhm.
gambling their money on things. And a lot of people are doing this for doing this for pure monetary gain. Um, and I think that that's how you eventually eliminate yourself from the market, because you're going to lose your money. However, yeah, so I don't know if that's if people are just going to keep coming after they keep losing, and that kind of thing is in crypto, right? Like you see narratives over and over again because people come in, pump a narrative, lose all their money, narrative disappears, and I understand that, it's a lot more sustainable when it comes to like prediction markets, that kind of thing, because you actually have information coming out of it that's valuable. But, you still have stats like 85% of polymarket traders are underwater. And I don't know, I worry for the sustainability of that kind of thing. But I mean, maybe that's a moot point and that's not really something that'll happen, but who knows, that's what I worry about.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting point. You bring up a lot of good stuff here. So you're actually it's very interesting. You're like an out of distribution person with these thoughts, and it's like smart of you to realize the market is going to eat me if I just like keep trading and pivoting into being a builder. That's like the best case for anybody because you get a lot more out of it. You like learn from it and you are contributing back. And like in general,
Right.
this the whole concept of producing over consuming, but like the problem with the tokenization of everything is like that is rare. 99 out of 100 people are going to be like, well, I'll just get it next time, and they don't actually
Right.
ever break out of that cycle. I do think that people who get completely burned on a narrative or like an NFT cycle or whatever, I think they do come back. They like kind of get the next little bit of savings that they're ready to
Right.
destroy
Right.
on something like this, and then they come right
Yeah.
back. They're like, oh, but this time it's AI agents.
Right. Right.
I'm
Right.
gonna win. I get the AI agents,
Right.
and to their credit, I mean, you can't win if you don't play. So like maybe you didn't understand NFTs, but you do have a better instinct for
Right.
that. Like maybe.
Right.
Um,
I mean,
so
I
there.
guess yeah. I mean,
No,
I
go
guess
ahead.
I'm being a little bit like cynical on the fact that, constantly people are just going to keep losing and keep losing, keep losing. Maybe you do have people who develop and then they end up winning, and then it's kind of a cycle of you get new winners every time,
Hmm.
and we just eventually like we just all kind of filter through and we all make it, right? But
Yeah. No,
the
that's probably not gonna happen. Uh,
but uh, but the
no, I
thing
think
is
you're
that
right. Like 90% of people just get destroyed.
yeah, people just get burnt. Now, there's a lot more, the reality is that come in the coming 10, 20 years, there's plenty more people who can come and get burnt, right? Like we still have a number of people to filter through, to destroy their savings, right? But the, And that's kind of one of the reasons that I was always bullish crypto. This was already something I believed from, a little over a year ago. Was this like, was this like the online casino, right? Like you no longer need to go to, Macau, Vegas to bet your money. You don't need to do all this kind of thing, right? And I noticed this with meme coins first. Before that, I truly thought that I was actually trading. I truly thought that I was doing something sophisticated. And then I realized with meme coins, like, wow, like one, this is super fun. Two, like, you can make tons of money, which is what makes it super fun. You can get lucky and make tons of money. Eventually, like you'll lose it back, but you can make tons of money. And I was like, wow, like this, this is way better than any traditional gambling. Like this is way more fun. Like you feel like there's a skill aspect to it. And there is no house. It's gambling without the house, right? The house, you're certain to lose. This, right, instead of having like 51-49 bad odds, like the odds are how bad you make it, but it can be, like the odds are 90% against you, right? It can
And
be
you can
worse
build
than
your own tools, so you
right,
can actually
exactly.
like you can't like walk into a casino with
Right.
something like that.
Precisely, yeah. In many ways, you could lose a lot worse than in the casino. However, you can also have a chance of winning, and that kind of entices people.
Yeah.
So I always believe that this is an industry that's going to come back because, and I truly I have this like pocket of belief for me in the meme coin industry. So I'm invested a lot. A part of my portfolio is in Pump.Fund because they're kind of building that infrastructure around this online casino, which is something that's going to come. Which is I think something that's going to grow. Right? You have these casino industries; they never die. I was in Vegas in April, and like the place is completely packed. It's completely packed. I know nobody's making money. Every casino you go to, MGM, The Win, New York,
Yeah.
everywhere, all across the strip, boom, packed, 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 packed. So I don't think it's wise of me to say that, you look at these people, they're all losing money, but they're still there. And it's been, 100 years. But now you look at meme coins and, okay, people are losing money, people kind of leave but come back. They're going to stay. I mean, you're going to have people who are going to come back and stay, and keep losing money. So,
Yeah, I mean it's lottery tickets, right? Like every corner
completely,
store
yeah.
sells lottery tickets. There's
Right.
100 different lottery tickets to buy.
Yeah.
Um,
and
nobody's
and
nobody's winning
nobody's
that
winning.
lottery.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess it is kind of foolish of me to say that we're gonna lose it because people are losing. But I don't think we're gonna. I just changed my opinion on that nap. I don't think we're gonna lose the marketization of things because people are
Yeah.
losing in the market.
Well, it
Um,
sort of is like the hyper financialization of everything is like another is the maybe the more technical version of like the tokenized future.
mhm.
And I mean, it's like, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it just a natural thing that is happening? Like, is it something we can avoid, or is it just an obvious way? And maybe like another thought I have is like with the dollar like hyperinflating and just kind of being ever since COVID and how much like how many dollars were printed, it's sort of money has become a lot more fake and like
Yeah.
decoupled from reality. And then as people can like spin up their own, crypto networks, and this one's now worth 1 billion and this one's worth 100 million based on like relatively flimsy narratives sometimes, and
Yeah.
especially like in pump fund, it's like, what has money become? Is it just like a certain amount of money you need to survive, and then a bit more than that you can be comfortable, and then
Right.
everything after that just becomes sort of like status and signal. So
Yeah.
maybe we are entering an era where that stuff just gets a lot more explicit and like
hmm
easier to integrate into your daily
Right.
life. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
I mean, look, I mean, I'm the thing is that I also thought that a lot of this like hyper financialization of things is going to essentially like take over the world. You're going to see it everywhere. People are going to be able to bet on anything, participate in markets constantly. You know what I mean? But I did see like a good tweet a couple months ago that kind of put me back in like a realistic mindset, you know. And I was like, it said something like, you know what, realistically, not everybody wants to just bet on stuff. Not every, you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
kind of in, you're in, you have a bias because, like, you know, us, the reader, we have a bias because, you know, I don't know about how much you're involved in crypto, but for me, I'm involved in crypto constantly, and those are the majority of the people that I talk to, probably 75 to 80% of the people that I'm talking to. And we all have the same idea, but maybe those other people that are not in the space don't have that same idea. Maybe they don't want to bet on everything. Maybe they don't want everything to be financialized. And although we were pilled, maybe they are not going to get pilled by that, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, you know, I'm not completely sure. A lot of this kind of thing is still up in the air. I do think that there is an enormous set of, you know, there is still a huge population to tap into. And then, you know, above that, like, I do have kind of also another bullish case for, you know, the population growing into, you know, hyper financialization, that kind of thing is, you know, crypto as a whole gives people the ability all around the world to participate in these markets. For now, like it's only developed countries. We only have people in developed countries, really. Some participants in underdeveloped countries, but as that infrastructure grows, you're giving people the chance to actually save their money in countries where you know, the currency is a lot more flimsy. Right now, we're seeing adoption of this kind of thing in the U.S., and that's why I feel it's blowing up, because people are realizing, you know, the instability of the currency. And obviously, like, that I'm just going to put as like a broad stroke, instability of currency. You know, I'm not necessarily qualified to tell you what's wrong with it and all of that, but people are realizing some instability with the currency, and people are kind of, you know, there's a flight towards, you know, digital assets and the online markets that we've created. But you see that a lot more in countries where currency is known to be unstable. One of the biggest crypto communities is in Buenos Aires in Argentina,
Yeah. Great
because
example.
of that, you know, and then I think that we're going to keep seeing that all around the world, you know, in other places where you have this kind of mix of developed and developed country that is a little bit problematic in some ways, right? So Argentina is not a, you know, is not a bungalow. You know, Argentina is a real country, but they do have these problems with their currency specifically. So yeah, I mean, I'm not completely sure. You know, I'm not completely sure what's going to happen, but you know, it's nice to theorize a little bit and make you know, some assumptions. But I definitely do think that, you know, there's an enormously untapped you know, population of people that is still going to come and join us in this game. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, yeah, there's like sort of the two sides where you have people in developing countries are like this stuff is like a godsend to them.
right,
They can save money, they can spend money, their money isn't printed to shit. Like Argentina has insane
right,
hyperinflation.
exactly,
Um, like Zimbabwe is a great example where
exactly.
the currency just went completely off the rails, and
Hmm.
if that had happened or been happening and Bitcoin had existed, you know, those people would have been a lot
Yeah,
safer.
yeah,
But then you have people in maybe like developed countries like US, Canada, where the cost of living is just higher and higher with like kind of no end in sight. And you almost are forced to gamble and forced to
exactly.
get involved in these tools, as you said, because um,
100%.
you like you know you're not gonna cut it as like if you're like a hairdresser and
Right.
you're like your life is hard. You know, if you
Yeah,
live in a
yeah,
big city and you have a regular job, um, your life is hard. Like you are
yeah,
either pushed out of the city or everything just kind of sucks, or you have to sell drugs. So it's like
yeah. There,
kind
yeah.
of
I agree. I think that a lot of people they don't want to necessarily just make ends meet and live. Like they want to have some ability to thrive
for
and
sure.
grow and build and so on. And that's just not really available to a lot of people, you know. And I
Hmm.
and I know, like, you know, especially in New York City, um, I have I have a number of older siblings, actually some in Vancouver, some in New York City, and I know that, it's tough. Like you're kind of just trying to live. You're just trying to survive. You're working a job, that kind of thing. But it's very hard to save money, to plan for the future, to do that kind of thing. So, and there's no real end in sight for that. Like you don't see things just like decreasing so yeah, I mean, you are sort of forced to do something special. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I would say that for a lot of people, that doesn't click to them as like, okay, I need to outcompete others in a marketplace of ideas and build something that is, a market competitive product.
Hmm.
Rather, I need to do something special, as in I need a miracle. I'm going to gamble my money. You know.
Right. And
Um,
actually, that's a good point in the sense of like maybe it will, maybe like market forces will push more people into entrepreneurship in that way because they kind of have to. Like they see that having a job is not
yeah.
going to cut it. Like I
Yeah.
met a founder who was an architect, and she just realized like this is not going to be a good future, and
Yeah.
now builds in Web3. And that's like
Yeah.
a great example where it's like, well, on the one hand, we do need more architects in the world, so that's
Yeah.
like not great. But on the other hand, this person was able to like completely change their life and is much happier and doing
Yeah.
things that they're much happier doing. So it's
Right. I mean,
like yeah.
and look, like, that's already kind of happening in a sense at a lot of the big schools, let's say in the US, where you have like this kind of talent, right? Where you have people who are, I guess you would say, hyper qualified. That's what you see. That's all you see. Stanford is all founders.
Hmm.
UPenn, plenty of founders. Plenty of people, all over the place are trying to do that. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to cut it. And also, a lot of things is like, nowadays, yeah, because these people are realizing, despite having spent their whole life preparing for academics, going to a top tier school, they're realizing that that is not enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is not like they're not going to necessarily thrive in this society by being an Ivy League grad, right? This is actually touched on a lot by um, Alex Karp of Palantir. Alex Karp is the founder of Palantir. I don't know if you know him. He's
We love
he's
this
an
talk.
yeah, he's an alumni of my school,
Hmm.
and I hear him talking about this a lot. And he's like, yeah, the average Ivy League grad is pissed off that their degree is really not worth that much anymore. So now you're forcing a lot of them into entrepreneurship, but who knows if that's necessarily the right path to try and make money, because that's just as competitive, you know.
Yeah, it's just as
But
competitive, and also like a lot of that is sort of like kind of you appeal to VCs so that
right,
they give you $1 million, and now you have status and you have a steady paycheck for the next few
right,
years. And so it's like not really, and a lot of what is built is like slop. Like I follow
yeah,
YC relatively closely, and there's like a lot of very questionable things happening there these days with just kind of weird companies. And I don't know
really.
if you know anything about the Gundo scene in Southern California.
No, no, no.
So Gundo is a really interesting kind of section of Twitter that I found where it's like very hardcore American dynamism group of people who are building like hard tech, atoms, not bits. There's someone making like weather modification technology, portable nuclear reactors, uh, uh, pharmaceuticals in space, and stuff like that, kind of centered around that like
Right.
ecosystem. And in I don't know if you've read Karp's book, The Technological Republic.
I just ordered it, but I haven't read it. No, I saw him talk about it a few days ago in an interview.
Okay,
Um,
sick. Yeah, it's
but
a great book, and I kind of really believe in that idea because I'm a sci-fi person. Like that's what I want to see in the world. Like I love I love the idea of the future and a cool future because you read a lot of sci-fi, you see all these different ideas, and like most of them are things that we actually can end up building. The idea of
yeah,
the internet, the idea of going into space even was
yeah,
originally sci-fi from like 300 years ago.
yeah,
So whenever I read sci-fi, I'm like, there is an element of reality here. Um,
hmm,
but making like I don't think Pump Fun is that. Like I don't
Yeah,
think,
yeah, right.
I don't think like another AI agent for automating business solutions is that.
Right,
And so I think what Carp is like referring to kind of gets to the heart of it, which is like it's not enough to just be an entrepreneur and just build something because it looks good to VCs. And I've seen that firsthand. Like I've seen people kind of trick VCs into giving them money with something that sounds great, but then, it's this is like this was like designed as like a idea bomb into this person's mind that this is a good idea for them to invest in
right. You're right, to make money.
to
Just to
make money.
have, yeah,
But the actual things that move the needle are things that change the world. Like Amazon,
right.
everything that Elon Musk does. There's
Yeah,
a reason he's the richest man in the world, and it's because he's doing things that like otherwise just flatly wouldn't exist.
right.
Like electric cars would not be as pervasive right now if he hadn't pushed Tesla to be what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Well, but here's the thing though, is I don't think it's necessarily a paradigm change that you need to get people to build stuff that is changing the world. I think that the reality of any industry is that you see you see thousands and thousands and thousands of companies come out building pure slop. Um, a lot of them make money, but in reality, you only have really one winner. In the 90s, you have Google. In 2000s, you have Facebook, that kind of thing. And then and you have one winner come out of every industry, and then they push forward into building more and more cool stuff. There's a great quote from one kind of legendary Twitter guy in crypto who I read through a lot of his posts very frequently, called GCR. He was a top trade. He was like I think the most prolific trader ever. He retired a couple of years ago.
oh, okay. I was like, I'm a pretty online Twitter person.
Yeah,
I'm like surprised I haven't.
yeah. And
Okay.
and actually, you should read through his tweet. I think he may be private now, but he has a lot of cool like takes. And one of his quotes is like, quote, while we spend the lion's share of our energy and ambitions erecting more and more complex and obfuscated Ponzi schemes, we are very, very slowly replacing the global financial system with
Hmm.
software that nobody controls. And the reality is that, as he says, like majority of everything is just erecting more and more complex Ponzi schemes. There
Yeah.
is going to be that diamond in the rough that then pushes the needle, and I think that the monetary incentive for people to just make stuff is what eventually, like, you do get, that diamond in the rough, So I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing for people to have that monetary incentive, because you are going to get that person who comes out and actually does something that changes the world.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I guess maybe that is sort of the white pill, like optimistic view
Right.
here, is that by kind of pushing us to this level of hyper financialized, everything has to be like about the bottom line.
Yeah.
You kind of push people into being builders, and you see a lot more
Right.
builders. Um, okay, I think we can end on that because that's a really nice positive note.
Awesome.
But yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on. I
Of
look forward
course.
to following Claritech. I actually signed up earlier
Oh,
today with
awesome.
the Cheetah bot. So
Great.
um,
That's great.
yeah,
Appreciate
thanks,
it.
man.
Thank you so much for having me. And this was a cool conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Thank you. Me too.
So, yeah, let's stay in touch. And thanks for having me, man.
Sounds good. Cheers.
All right. See you, man.